eminent domain situation. Who knows where that will lead if it ends up in court. I was led to believe by the answer to that question that there was communication and there was, in general terms, an agreement at that price level. Now we're seeing before us a request for an additional $245,000. Now we're approaching $750,000. And so I've got a lot of questions. Number one, where does this presently stand in terms of eminent domain? Where does it stand between the town and the owner? Is this an agreed figure now? Is this a negotiated figure? Are you coming back to ask for additional monies based on a firm agreement that you have? Do we face the prospects of an eminent domain proceedings where some unpredictable judge may decide that it's worth maybe another $250,000 on top of that? I mean, if we're going to get up to the $1 million range or more, then I think this town needs to reevaluate this particular issue, because they may find or may agree that $1 million can be better spent in some other direction in the preservation of land. And so I don't think the town has been clear with the community on this issue. I certainly haven't been reading much about it in the papers recently to fully understand it. And so I want to know exactly where we stand right now on this issue. And what can we expect? And what are we getting for the $245,000 that you're asking us to appropriate?
Mr. Tropiano, to answer the question, I think I allowed Mr. Deacons to go forward really on what's the main article, because he had been standing before the amendment was made. But I think after Mr. Tropiano answers the question, if that's what he's going to do, I will ask for any debate or discussion on the proposed amendment. We will take a vote on the proposed amendment, and then depending on what happens, we'll have further discussion on the main motion.
Okay.
Go ahead.
John, this is not additional money. At the time, we authorized borrowing to buy that piece of property for X number of dollars, and we said that we would seek funds for the purpose of the property. Now, we borrowed monies on bands, which are short-term notes, and they're giving us $245,000, which will pay down those bands. So the number of dollars has not changed. It's just another funding source, that's all. Okay, so we're not adding another 245. It's the same amount we told you last time. We're just paying for it from another pocket so that we don't have to borrow the money. Okay? All right.
Well, I asked some other questions as well, and I accept that, and I appreciate that, and I'm pleased to hear that. However, after the last town meeting, as I say, I voted for the $500,000, and I asked the question that I asked, and I was called sometime later and told that there wasn't an agreement between the town and the landowner. Now, where does that stand at this present time? Are we heading for court on an eminent domain dispute? Where are we exactly on that, and what's the likelihood that the number might increase pending the outcome of that litigation?
At this point,
Mr. Tropiano, to answer the question, no.
I'm sorry. At this point, we have taken the property for the appraised values, and we have paid the monies out accordingly to the family. And at this point, nothing has been filed with us to say that they have refused it or that they are going in another direction or anything at this point. So at this point, it's our property and we've paid for it. And that's all we have to tell you at this point.
Given what I just heard, Madam Moderator, I would support the main motion and be hopeful that the town isn't faced with a challenge on the price of this property in the future. Thank you.
Mrs. Moderator.
No, Mr. Russell, please. Is there any discussion on the proposed amendment? The proposed amendment is to refer...
Point of order, Mrs. Moderator.
Yes, Mr. Russell.
This is a report. The motion is to accept the report, and the report would be in its entirety. And to accept that amendment, you would have had a motion to divide the question, because that's the way we're proceeding right at this moment. And this is not a proper parliamentary action, in my opinion.
Thank you for your point of order. I respectfully disagree. We will, if there's any discussion on the proposed amendment, which is to refer line 3 of Article 23 for further study. And just for clarification, line 3 has to do with feasibility and design development study for affordable condominiums at 113 Onset Ave. Is there anything to be said on the proposed amendment? Yes, Ms. Pizzolato.
I appreciate the comments by the speaker who had a concern about that line item. I just wanted to mention that the property is now owned by the Wareham Housing Authority, and the point of a feasibility study is to determine if what her concerns are in fact true. The money will be well spent in collaboration with community development, looking at the character of the neighborhood, the traffic, the zoning, lot size, etc., and then determining if the number of units that might be designed there would be economically feasible. If it turns out that it's not, then the project won't go forward, but it's information that would be important, and this is exactly what the money's for. So I would appreciate if people voted down the amendment to the motion and voted favorably on the main motion. Thank you.
Ms. Fox-Rubin.
I have a question, and I don't know if anybody here has the answer to it. Do we have any information, for example, on the ratio of affordable housing in Onset versus the amount of affordable housing provided in Wareham versus traditional housing?
Is anyone available to answer that question? Mrs. Perola.
Mrs. Fox-Rubin, I can tell you that we don't meet the mandated 10% in town. We are under 6% in the whole of the town of Wareham and all villages. So even if you were to divide it in half and just say it was 50-50, it wouldn't even be 3%.
Well, for my consideration, it's an important distinction.
It is, and if there's someone here from, the question should be answered by community development planning.
Because in the absence of that, I agree that the feasibility study will make the determination on whether it makes sense.
Gentleman in the back in the center.
Good evening. My name is Len Gay. For your information, these are 113 and 115 Onset Avenue, two approximately 6,000 square foot lots, which is not a whole lot bigger than the room we're in right now. And they're going to put 4 affordable housing units in it, which is going to generate, what, 4, 6, 8 cars. I think it's a waste of money. I think you just rehab the existing building, cut the grass on the place, and maybe even sell it. Thank you.
Mr. Deacons.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and I apologize for getting up on this subject again, and I sat down and kind of contemplated Mr. Tropiano's remarks. I think I need a little more clarification. I think I heard him say we, meaning the town of Wareham, has taken the land. I would like an explanation of what taken land means as opposed to purchasing the land. The money that has been made available by the town of Wareham, how is it going to be spent? How is this deal going to be closed? Do we face the proposition of a challenge? And what if indeed a piece of waterfront the size of what I'm looking at there on the map with that much frontage on the ocean turns out to be $1 million proposition? I mean, somehow I don't feel fully protected on this particular transaction because I think we're getting into something that we can't readily define at town meeting, and we can't readily predict what the value of that land will be if indeed it does go to litigation.
Mr. Giorgio can answer the question.
Madam Moderator, through you to the previous speaker, the Board of Selectmen have taken that land by eminent domain. And what that means is an order of taking was signed by the Selectmen and it was recorded in the Registry of Deeds. Now that occurred last December. And the town made what's called a pro tanto payment to the owners of the land. Now, in terms of what the town is required to do in a taking of this sort, is that you have to pay the fair market value for the land. and it is the fair